Hi, it's Chris Watkin here, and for this special podcast I've got Peter Savage, who is the current ARLA President. Welcome, Peter.
Hi there.
Peter, if you don't mind, I want to ask you a few questions. It was only last week that you were standing in front of 1,200 people talking at the ARLA conference. Let's kick off with that. How did it go? How did the ARLA conference go for you and ARLA as a whole?
Well, obviously, from a personal standpoint, I hope it went well. I certainly got that. It was a great buzz, that's for sure. There was, especially, I think, in the exhibition hall. But the feedback thus far is excellent. And we did decide at the very outset that for various obvious reasons, this year it will be full of detailed information, etc., with the fee ban and CMP and all the rest of it. So we do hope we covered that for all the delegates that attended.
Talk to me about what ARLA were doing for ARLA members with regard to the tenant fee ban.
Well, we just produced a tenant fee toolkit, which includes, I mean, there are so many elements from, I think there's 17 videos, there are templates of various sorts, etc., 100 FAQs that we've answered, some case studies from Scottish members demonstrating how they managed to get through and survive and thrive after the banning, the fee ban there.
Do you think most letting agents are prepared for the tenant fee ban?
Surprisingly, no.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. As you're aware, we were at a meeting together this morning. There was a gentleman there thought he'd wait till May and then he'd have a look at it. I would suggest that's a bit late in the day, but that's his commercial decision. But I mean, I know for a fact that until about 6 months ago, some people still believed that it wasn't ever going to happen. Whereas, if they remembered, it was just like Brexit in the Conservative Manifesto of 2017.
I mean, you said today at today's presentation in Newcastle that when it went through the Lords and the Commons, no one stood up against it. So it was always going to go through, wasn't it?
Absolutely. It's very rare that any act or bill will go through the House without any dissenting voices. And in this particular instance, there was not a single one. That's why it went through so quickly. What
did ARLA do to try and mitigate the issues of the ban? Because, I mean, you stood up today and said that the Housing Minister said a week before that it was never going to happen. Why do you think it did happen? Let's roll the clock back.
Well, look, the bottom line is this. It's, as far as certainly I'm concerned, it was a political decision. It wasn't one based on merit. We always believed not only had we provided sufficient evidence, but by inclination we hoped that the incumbent would be sort of pro-business and not anti-business. And we saw no issue with fees. There were some that talked about capping, but we decided as a policy that wasn't where we wanted to be with that. I mean, lawyers charge fees, banks charge fees, everything else. I think providing that they are transparent, and we always stress that point about transparency, because, you know, our reputation needs to improve in the industry, and we were all for and supported the government in those laws regarding transparency. But I do not think that overall it will have the result that perhaps they're looking for, and that being to help a certain demographic of tenant that tries to enter the PRS because of the lack of social housing.
What do you think will happen to let's look at each individual party? What do you think will happen to rents?
Well, even Shelter, when it gave evidence to the committee on this before the decision was made, admitted quite readily that rents will increase.
Do you think most letting agents will put their fees onto their landlords or just suck it up?
I think.
I know it's a commercial decision. But
sure, I think a bit of each is the answer. And again, those that have taken the time and trouble to look at their bottom lines and their P&Ls are finding that they are able to make up that loss, perhaps far easier than they first thought. Because they've never bothered to quantify it. And there are other ways of income streams coming in from referrals, etc. And I have to note a word of caution on referral fees that Heather Wheeler, the Minister, responsible for our sector has cautioned us to make sure that going forward any referral fees are, as again, transparent, or we will go the way of the fee ban, which I think would be an absolute disaster. But it's definitely going to disadvantage certain members of society. That is for sure, because some of those who can't provide the best references, the best whatever, and haven't got the best track record, are going to be severely disadvantaged. And that's just going to be a fact of life, I'm afraid.
You are quite a technical person. What sort of questions are agents asking you about the tenant fee ban? What if tenant this does that? I mean, let's start this. Let's kick off. Where do we stand with holding deposits and holding them and referencing?
Well, again, the law now states, and by the way, we received the draft guidance. I should say the guidance now from government only last week. So our comms team are now looking at that to make sure that the advice we give it tallies completely with that draft. I keep saying draft. We waited that long for it, perhaps that guidance. But 15 days is the maximum you can hold it. Unless, of course, for example, if it's a student let, you would clearly take, in most cases, the holding deposit well before the date that the tenancy begins. So providing you have something agreed in writing between yourself and the tenant, then that's perfectly fine.
What if the tenant fails referencing? Are you allowed to keep that 4-week holding deposit?
Yes.
Sorry, that weekly?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, how does it have to be a material amount? Or?
No, forgive me, I mean, this is with the provision that they have, if they fail the right to rent, if they have provided misleading information, for example, regarding their income, their employment, perhaps CCJs or whatever. I mean, it is accepted these days that, anybody in society can check out what their credit rating is, and if they have any CCJs against them, and you can obtain that information free.
So really, and again, this is personal opinion, I'm asking your personal opinion here, is agents would be daft not to take a holding deposit when an application comes in to protect themselves against a tenant. Yeah. And that's a commercial decision.
No, but a holding deposit. I think really you are not doing right by. I mean, I was always back in the day advised really that it was a goodwill deposit rather than a holding deposit. I mean, perhaps holding would suggest that that means that it's booked, if you like, but it is subject, as you always have on those forms, subject to contract, etc. But I think it would be completely nuts to have a situation where you didn't take a holding deposit, because again, I think it helps providing that it's properly explained to the tenant. It supports the fact they're about to commence the route into a legally binding contract. Okay.
What if we've got a tenant in a property and they lose their keys on a Saturday night? They've been down Ritz's and a few lager shandies.
Yeah.
Are we going to be able to charge our time to go out and replace the keys at 2
No,
in the morning?
No, you're not, I'm afraid. And we still, we have, I believe, as part of this guidance, there's further information regarding keys, locks, the change of locksmiths, etc. Because all that was a bit up in the air. And again, I do apologise, but I haven't had a chance to look at that yet. But certainly with regard to your time, that will be a definite no-no. So I would suggest that you should advise the tenant I'll see you at the office on Monday morning.
Although the tenant could get a locksmith in, but that would be at their own cost, wouldn't it?
Indeed.
That couldn't be charged back to the agency.
No, indeed.
What are the standard questions that you're being asked by agents on, questions around scenarios on the tenant fee ban?
Well, again, specifically around default fees and sort of late payment charges, etc., etc. And again, these are drastically reduced now, the amount of those things you can charge for. You can charge for surrender of tenancy, change of sharer, etc.
But they're capped though, aren't they?
They are capped indeed, and they all also have to be reasonable. Okay, I mean we have had going around the meeting, we've had a few creative ideas about how they can perhaps people can charge, but and there've been some very awkward suggestions. But I would suggest that if you don't want to be part of case law going forward, then you play it by the book, and if in doubt, leave it out.
Okay, what about these tenant, these deposit replacement schemes. Where have agents got to be careful with these? Because there's a lot of firms out there that are offering almost cashbacks and things like that.
Yeah, well, clearly, and there's absolutely nothing in the new bill to stop you offering that to tenants, and to many that may well be appealing. But what you mustn't do is avoid a possible PPI moment where in that you cannot just steer the tenant towards a nil deposit scheme. They must be given choice, and so they can either pay the 5-week security deposit, or you could go down the route of nil deposit. Again, I have noticed some agents advertising the fact that this particular property is available with no deposit. I wouldn't advise putting that alone. There has to be qualification on what that means in practice. Because
you're going to have some negs. Let's be honest. Yeah. On a commission.
Yes, and that's those certainly practitioners in London that I know that were first through the gates with these sort of products noticed that the negs saw this as a way to get properties let awfully quickly, but they soon the ones with the brain and the sensible businessmen soon jumped on that and stopped it.
Good stuff. Do you think this tenant fee ban could actually be good for the lettings industry in the long term?
Look, I mean, that's a very hard question to answer. I think
because it might get rid of the rogues.
It certainly may well do that, and I saw CMP on 1st of April as the start of that, heading towards the regulatory framework, and regulation is coming. But I also am absolutely convinced, as our Scottish colleagues have shown, that there is life after this ban. It will be tough, but I think again it's forcing many members and many businesses outside membership to look for the very first time, in some cases for a very long time, to look at their bottom line and look at their operating costs. And it's amazing how people have found there are quite simple ways of saving on that, and it's a good exercise and good business practice. So
I think we all get guilty of working too close to the coalface and not taking a step back and looking at not in the business, but on the business, and looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah, it is. I mean, look, the majority of our members are still in the independent sector, and it's easy for those in the corporate sector who have people they can set to task on those and let them run off and organise these things so they can mitigate the effects of the fee ban. But you're right, especially with owner PPDs, it's very important that they do have taken that step back and have a look. And I think it's an opportunity. One thing I was very surprised about at last week's conference, and having walked around the exhibition hall to thank those exhibitors for supporting us, was the fact that many of them were detailing the amount of new entrants to the marketplace they've been talking about there. So there are clearly other people out there that see this as an opportunity.
It was interesting because I was at the conference, and if you don't mind me saying, for the first 2 hours, it was like a morgue. It was the feeling in the room was quite dour, but all of a sudden, probably from late morning onwards, the atmosphere in the room was amazing, and it built throughout the afternoon. There is actually a good feeling in the industry if you just put your mind to it and work hard, work smart. And that's where, if you don't mind me saying, that's what I love about ARLA, is that there's a lot of letting agents out there that are one-man, two-man bands, and it's quite different, hard work to you're alone, but you're not on your own with ARLA, are you?
No, absolutely. And having said that too, you are, if you only look at the positive side, you're far more nimble and agile in the business place. I mean, I know that I learned that when sitting on the Property Mark board and as someone with an independent background. When we were all anxious to make change, and we've made a huge amount of change, but it was like shifting an oil tank around, and that's the thing that the corporate's having to deal with, is the sheer scale of it. So really, being an independent who can make changes quite swiftly, I think gives you a bit of an advantage. It certainly makes your life easier if you'd only care to look.
Well, why do you think more people aren't in ARLA? Although you did say that membership's growing at the moment.
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't say bizarrely. I think it makes common sense. But since the announcement of the fee ban, it's fair to say that our membership department has been groaning under the weight of applicants for that, and we're actually looking at processes now to increase the speed of that, because we don't want people hanging around. But it is growing, and I think with the announcement of forthcoming regulation, it is going to be a major disadvantage if you're not a member of a professional body and have therefore not got perhaps qualifications, perhaps can't demonstrate ongoing professional development, CPD, continuing professional development, and haven't got all those other bits. It's going to be that are so important in a modern industry and progressive industry. It's going to be a massive and further financial impact when regulation comes in, because you'll be playing catch up.
Yeah, but everyone, you go on those websites, I won't mention the name, but those websites out there where everyone has their tooth penneth. Everyone says that ARLA is out to make money and you're all lining your own pockets. Is that true?
No, well, I actually did a missive to those sorts of those comments in my speech at conference. In that, we all agree that we should remind people out there that we are a not-for-profit organisation. Every penny that is made goes back in to keeping costs down for our members and providing additional member benefits. I mean, again, over the past few months alone, we brought in a free employer helpline, a membership helpline, which helps with everything.
That legal helpline's worth you 230 quid.
No, absolutely. Well, I mean, the suite of additional templates, etc., we're providing now through with the tenant fee toolkit, forgive me, is again a huge cost saving. If you had to reach out to a solicitor to get guidance on that, even if the solicitor knew what he was talking about, it would cost you a bloody fortune. I mean, again, membership fees haven't gone up for some considerable time. We've kept them down. We've done our best to mitigate the cost of CMP, despite the fact that now it's a fivefold increase in the amount of cover we've had to provide. And it's worth pointing out that in most cases, past increases have never even kept up with inflation. We've always tried to keep them down.
So what would you say to anyone who is on the fence about joining ARLA? Why wouldn't you,
Well, I can't see any possible reason why you would not. Again, I think it's actually value for money. I remember my first term in presidency, one of my key aims at that time was to persuade some of the larger corporates that had left membership of ARLA, Countrywide and others over the years, to come back into the fold. And I was pleased how readily they were happy to do that, not only because they noticed the changes, but one of the most difficult things in this industry is to get good, reliable, qualified staff. And all the large corporates realise that from a career perspective, young people enjoyed that being a Property Mark member, in that they could get the qualifications to move on with their career. They also found that training and qualification helped with staff retention, which is a huge cost to this industry, and it helps you to find the best employees out there too.
One thing,
apart from protecting your client, landlords, and the consumer.
One of the best things I like about ARLA are the regional meetings, because you can, you're in a room of fellow letting agents from your area who are all going through the same problems and issues as you. Yep. You can share ideas, can't you?
Absolutely. And again, we've just finished the trial of a new benefit called a Property Mark Inspire.
All right.
And that's a way of putting small groups of, I think it's 7 or 8 agents together, where they're actually comparing notes, comparing their business skills, actually joining up on certain things, whether it's approaching certain providers, etc., to keep their costs down, and also learning from each other.
Well, that worked well, as long as there's no two people from the same town, so it's all about putting the right people together.
Yeah.
You'd almost set up little units, little pods of agents, and you can share ideas.
But again, our major aim currently is to make sure that we help and support members through it, and not just by providing templates, but providing that additional business knowledge and all the rest of it, and making sure it's there readily available for them whenever they wish.
What's the future of ARLA, ANNEA and Property Mark?
It is my opinion that membership of a professional body will be a part of the regulatory framework regime going forward. And I say, just on the side, I'm especially pleased that we're soon to hear about a lead enforcement authority for our sector too, which again is all important. It's no good having all this legislation unless it's actually policed properly. But I think the future is bright. You know, our qualifications, departments have worked hard, and our qualifications are now accepted across the board, and are even, you know, being taught in sixth form colleges and so on and so forth. So it is a proper career path for those people who don't want to, like I mean, I am the perfect example of a misspent youth. I had a good education, but I had no intention of ever going to university. So I think the future is bright, and I think it was also pointed out to me that when the financial services became regulated by back in the day, now the FCA, that it suddenly gave far more credence with the consumer about the value of dealing with a proper qualified company. And so I think it will enhance the businesses of all our members, and as it goes forward, it will certainly rid us of all the cowboys and rogues that currently infest our industry.
One final question. What's it meant to you to be president of ARLA?
Well, again, without repeating myself too often, it is my second term. As I said at ARLA conference, it's my final term. I think it's about time now I step back and let the younger people come through the ranks. It's meant an awful lot. I've enjoyed immensely being part of a team of people who have brought about the huge changes within ARLA, within property market itself, over the past few years, and I'm pleased to say too that, you know, it is discernible quite easily now by the members. I get comments all the time, and that's if I played a part of that, and that's all that can be said about me in the future, then I'm happy with that.
Peter, thank you very much.
All right, sir.